I think one of the most asked questions for me is how I make my videos. Now, I haven't sat and addressed it because it's a huge process. It has a lot of things involved to make a shoot into a product that you guys get to watch. And I was thinking how best I can show it to you guys so that it's very informative as well, but it doesn't take up a lot of your time. And I will get to it. I will start probably making more videos like those which give you an insight of certain details of the process. But for now, I thought I might as well make a breakdown of the latest video that I posted, which is Mumbai Dreaming, and it is a very good way to show you the impact of sound design as well. Now, I cannot stress enough the importance of sound in film because you already know it. If not, it plays a very important role in keeping the audience or the viewer engaged and immersed in it. That is why I'm going to show you the same edit without the background score to show you guys how sound can help gel all of it together and create a cohesive product.
प्रवाशांनी कृपया काळजीपूर्वक रांगेत उतरावे.
CST is like a shrine for everybody subscribing to any amount. It belongs to everyone. It's like you told me, good matter right now. Right now. SMAL. Yeah.
Nothing much, I'm leaving in 1 hour.
Where are you?
Mumbai.
You're in Mumbai, no?
Yeah, why?
Amazing timing.
Mumbai video. Oh.
Yeah.
This island city
Okay.
many years before independence has left its mark on the old city.
So let me tell you what Mumbai is for me. When I say Mumbai, it's more like, people always say it's the city of dreams. And in a way it totally is, because this place does not sleep, man. Like, I know for a fact I can go for work at like 12 o'clock in the night or 1 o'clock and still have fun working. You can just say it's always on the run, and that's the beauty of Mumbai.
I know, right?
I do the
Good. No, I was there for 3 days, no? Like I felt it in those 3 days.
Alright, now that you watched it, let's get a breakdown of how the entire process happened, all the transitions and cuts that go into the video. Let's jump into Premiere Pro because that's what I use, but the process is almost the same for every other editing application out there. Also note that I use After Effects as well. A lot of my work requires After Effects. It's just more flexible in terms of controlling the video to whatever you like, and that is why you will see a combination of both of these in the video. Oh, also if you noticed, the plant is dead. I haven't posted in so long that the plant died. I've been watering it. I didn't kill it because of my negligence. It just died. Yeah, cool. Alright, so here's my workspace, and I've kind of arranged it to make it easier to show you guys how everything works. Here you can see these yellow labeled footages, which are the drone files, the aerial shots, and the purple ones are the grade. You've got the grade written on it. So I'm using a LUT that I've designed for this, and hopefully I'll be pushing it out this year, 2020. Let's see. But yeah, so, and you have the dark green layers, which are some filters which add that grain. So you can see this is trying to mimic a very retro vibe. And then you have the green footages are the nested sequences, and these pinkish kind of labeled elements are the After Effects files, which are dynamically linked. There are some effects on it, and here's the sound design. Alright, so I'm just kind of making everything visible over here. Alright, so let's start with the first few seconds. Nothing crazy, it's motion graphics of my title. I've used elements which is a cityscape and a little bit of siren over there. Now let's jump into the start. Alright, so here's the drone footage. It was heavily grained, a lot of noise in it. I cleaned it using Neat Video. So it's cleaned and then I brought it back because then it's an easier workflow rather than loading up the project. And you can see there's a bit of lens distortion there. Color balance. So now I use color balance to create 3 different channels. So you can see if these are not screened, they're normal. There's a red and then there's a green and a blue channel. All of these have blend modes of screen on them. This is to achieve the RGB leak kind of effect, which I generally use in most of my videos. You can see it happening here, and the lens distortion does exactly that. It's trying to create the leak over there. Alright, and then on top of all this is a Lumetri color grade that just pops it all into place. So you can see there's a swell in sound over here. I'm just gonna solo the track and it stops, and that is to just build a kind of intro. Alright, if you notice, there are a lot of markers over here. You can see entire timeline is filled with a lot of markers. It was only my attempt to kind of add beats, because if you listen closely, the music doesn't really have a sort of beat or a rhythm to pick up on. So just to make it easier to show what kind of cuts I needed, I kind of marker. Alright, now jumping into the next part of the sequence.
प्रवाशांनी कृपया काळजीपूर्वक रांगेत उतरावे.
So at this particular point, you can see I've kind of controlled the channels, and this is a very important part of sound design, where you add a little layer of immersion by controlling where the audio plays. So in this case, it's playing on your right ear more than the left, and here it's more of a balanced situation. And also I added another kind of like a swell, like a reverse swell of the same thing, the train audio. I just kind of created a bass boosted version of it and gradually faded it down. So I've taken this part of the footage onto After Effects to add this tracked text element as an intro. So I have the first sequence here. So it starts from here and then transitions into the train and then into the taxi. So added here is gradual speed ramps to add this movement into it. So here you can see the same. So this is the similar kind of edit with a speed ramp that flows over here. So all of this is grouped or nested together, and an interesting effect is used called RSMB, Real Smart Motion Blur. So it's basically a motion blur plugin to add lifelike motion blur to your videos, and you see this is achieved through RSMB. Now if I don't, it's not really gonna gel together as a single piece of transition. So that's what I did over here. And on top of this is the color grade. Completely holds all of this piece of edit together. Alright, moving on. Let's focus on the sound for a second over here. Alright, so what you see is the ambience of the ocean itself and a few kids playing around, because the best way to achieve Foley is to recreate the entire scene of your shot from the sounds of the kids playing around, people walking. All of that adds realism to that shot of yours. Swoosh kind of a transition, that audio effect that. So here you can see the train audio has been controlled exactly like the previous step, which moves from the left to the right ear. So you can see it starts from the left and then moves to the right ear. A similar effect is done even in the taxi, because right now you can see the taxi on your left side, so the priority of audio is towards the left, and all of them is kind of bound together with this audio track. That kind of a very subtle peak.
CST is like a shrine. Everyone subscribing to
Alright, so what we saw here is I had to kind of bring in that sense of vintage or the British era, because most of Mumbai's buildings owe it to the previous architecture and the importance of it is a lot. So I had to kind of give a glimpse that shows the actual dot rendering
like a shrine. Everybody subscribe.
and a very old footage of the place. So it's from a old video that talks about the place. So all of these elements, just it adds to the fact that this building holds a lot of value. And so you can see a little bit of typewriter kind of sounds that switch from each frame, and it is masked to the next part of the video with a train horn. And then we get on to this. Again, this is an After Effects composition dynamically linked. What I've done here is nothing great. I've added a lot of light rays that's coming from the top of the skylight. I just did this because I saw the fan spinning and I thought it'd be a really cool effect if the fan kind of created that effect, Tyndall effect, I think that's what it's called. So, and then on top of that is a grade. Alright, so let's jump to the audio work of this. So you can see that the previous narration of CST terminal is still going on, but you can see the fan sound. You can see the fans moving around. So I've done this similar work here as well, which moves from the left to the right. So it's a very subtle effect and it's not really evident, but it does add a lot of value into the edit, because your subconscious kind of understands, and it would your work as an editor is to trick the brain into thinking that it's actually there in the space. So this transitions in to this shot. So it's nothing great over here. You can see I've actually added a mask that cuts the video to this point, and then there's a simple movement by hand which shows the ticker of the train tracks, and there's a little bit of digital sounds that have been added to it. Let's look at the sound work for it. It has a sort of a whoosh, and that's what we call it, I guess. And there are different layers of whoosh in it. It's not just a single swooping sound, but multiple that adds the value to it. That's another interesting element, just to sell the digital kind of output. Alright, so we switch. So this is a really important part over here. So I'm going to play the music as well for this part, because you'll know how low pass impacts audio. So if you notice, I added a low pass and kind of gradually faded it, so it's moving from a very outdoor space into a completely enclosed and more of a calmer place, and I wanted to achieve it. So the particles in the footage are achieved through a plugin for After Effects. I just 3D tracked the space and added a lot of particles around. Alright, so now this transitions into the exterior of the CST. What I did here was a gradient wipe so let's switch both of these effects off. You can see the actual footage is just gliding inside, but you see it had good gradients running over, so I thought I cleaned out the whites of the previous video because I just needed this to work with, and then added a gradient wipe which starts from here with nothing and completely wipes into the footage to add this sort of smooth entry into the next footage. I have this signature projector slide sound effect which I've also shared with you guys in one of the videos. So if you see, there's these quick slide changes that sell the effect. You have a sudden switch into this very cool looking frame that kind of wraps the skyscrapers together. So what this is nothing but, let's close this. So I have a Luma key on the original footage, so I'm going to switch it off, and you can see I've cleaned out the sky. So once that is done, you can want to switch this off, and the background is the time lapse that I shot there. So all of this is supported with an effect of thunderous storm. So, and this progresses onto the next part of the shot as well, slowly fading out. Again in the car it continues, and here you can see I've added another low pass to add that sense of being inside a space. Another important part of sound design comes over here, because so this basically is a very quick, tense cut of what my feeling was when I met him. It was of great depth, and I wanted to show that in this sort of a very paparazzi experience. So you can see a lot of crowd audio, and you can see the cameras flash, and then all of it is again wrapped with a heartbeat. So for the video, you can see there is a white mat which is below the footage that is fading. So now I didn't want to fade it naturally to white, but add a little bit of that texture there. So I used a gradient, and the gradient just transitions into white, and then there's a blank gap of the camera flash, and then you have the next part of it. If you notice, this and the next one are similar in length because they are very rhythmic, and over here you can see a little bit of flaring kind of a overlay that I've used. And then all of this transitions into the night shot. Alright, so and then you can see the main soundtrack, a low pass that is transitioning into a very open and normal track again, and this follows with some street shots, basic shots, but make note that you can see I've chopped it right at the point of the switch, and I've decreased the audio over here compared to this one, because again you can see the traffic is at a farther distance, and right now here you can see the crowd, and then I've kind of added a swap channel because we are looking at it in the opposite direction right now from this frame. And here you can see a simple dissolve, and on top of it is a normal movement of this shot. You see happening here is actually a blending mode. So if I remove this, you can see it's just black. It was a pillar that I used as a frame block. So now I'm going to use the screen, and that's how you're able to see the video in the bottom layer. Alright, so this next bit is just some bokeh of the trees over there. I just like the shot, that's why I used it. And so now what this does is it's in a lighten mode, and if I remove this, it's just the same footage which is slowly dissolving, but I use the lighten, and I'm able to see the footage that is in the bottom layer, which is this building. Now I've again slightly dissolved it, and all of this is being supported with an audio effect. I don't know what you call it. It's, I think, fairy dust. That's what I like to call it. But so what I've done is added a reverb. This sound effect is actually nested. So now I do this. It's a quick tip. I do this because reverb works well after the sound has stopped moving. So if you listen closely, you can hear that small aftertone. So this next section is time lapse. There's an interesting time lapse sound effect that I used, and you see there's a reduced noise by Neat Video to clean up the noise that was in this time lapse, and you can see there is a verb stabilizer to just add that bit of smoothness into it. At the same time, there is the RSMB, like the previous point, where it is just blending all these frames smoothly together. And inside this is the time lapse that has a scaling effect. Now I've used this to add a little bit of life into the still time lapse that it is. And then we have a quick cut to another aerial shot of Mumbai. And like the previous point, right here again there is a vintage forced nostalgia that I'm adding with just a few layers of the frame and the texture and a grain. So now an interesting effect is added over here, which is a channel blur. So if I switch it off, we can see that it's much cleaner. So I added a channel blur and blurred out the red channel, and let's move forward.
Nothing much thing is I'm leaving in
an architectural shot which transitions into my friend looking at another space of architecture. This is again done in After Effects just because this part of the video did not exist, so I only had a frame block for this footage, but then I kind of built. So if you look closely, this is an added part which I used After Effects for, and the other footage is being slowly masked. All of it is nested or grouped, and a speed ramp is added right at the center of it. Now all of this is supported with some audio effects, and again you can see the priority of the audio channels it's more towards the left because the shot is coming from the left. Mumbai is a very important part for my friend, and I wanted to know what his perspective was, so I'm just gonna play that track right now.
Where are you?
Mumbai.
You're in Mumbai, no?
Yeah, why?
Amazing timing.
Mumbai. Oh.
Yeah.
So you can see that I've added a reverb to it to make it more of a dreamy experience rather than a normal conversation that is happening. So it was recorded over a phone call. You can see the audio level has been boosted a little because audio from a phone call is not really the best of quality. So this is being played simultaneously among the other sound effects.
Where are you?
Mumbai.
You're in Mumbai, no?
Yeah, why?
Amazing timing.
Mumbai. Oh.
Yeah.
Alright, so this section is simple, so there's an addition of that frame, just a different perspective, and that moves and transitions to the drummers. Now here the drummers are in the bottom, and I've added a warp stabilizer to smooth out the shot, and at the same time here you can see a gradient wipe to have a very slight aftertone of the same video. Alright, the sounds used for this shot is the water, which is targeted at the left ear, the left channel, and then I have a night windy audio effect that is onto your right. So it's a combination of the two that happens on both your ears. On to the next part.
Okay. So let me tell you what.
Alright, so here I had two shots. One was a close-up and one was a wide. So I thought I could use this sort of a magnifying effect to show the close-up part of it. It's basically a transition designed in this manner. So this is again an After Effects project file. So what I've done here is a simple circle graphic that has been blurred and then enlarged. So now at the same time you can see there's a mask that's happening on the close-up shot, which is finely expanded. Now there is two effects here, primarily the RGB leak and at the same time a bit of distortion on the lens. So you can see it happen around. So now all of this is accompanied by, so it's to jump into the next video or this shot, I used a slight wind that kind of builds up, and again you have a similar vocal backing of the historic structure.
It's more like, people always say it's a city of dreams, and in a way it totally is, because
so here you can see the shot was basically me just rotating my camera around, but there is a speed ramp here. So you can see that it's speeding up to this point and slowing down and then again speeding up to the next shot. It's nested and then RSMB is added to it. You see how important motion blur is, and there are multiple tools to achieve this. You can use different kinds of blurs to create this, but I prefer this plugin because it's really good, it's optimized, and it creates almost a right blur to the scene. So here what I did was I had this shot and I just flipped the footage. So the original shot is this way. It's just part of the previous shot, but when I was moving my camera around, so what I did was I just flipped it to match the movement from the previous video and added again RSMB, motion blur, to sell it. Here I've increased it to 90% and complete blur, and you can see there's a very small dissolve here because I just it wasn't completely blending together, and I just added this one single frame of blend. So now this cuts to another After Effects dynamic link where I have masked out the statue and put a time lapse of the sky in the back. If you notice, I've added a sort of lens distortion. I think it's called optics compensation in After Effects, and I've just to add that bit of curvature to the sky, otherwise it would look very flat. Alright, if you notice, I have another piece of track here that's basically heartbeats. which start increasing in tone and intensity and build up. So at the last point they are this fast, and I've taken a long break and added a last one right at the end of the video at around this point. And so I've used a studio reverb to kind of let's just listen to it solo, so you can see aftertone for it, and that's why the studio reverb was used. Also, it is a little bass boosted because the original sound didn't have enough bass in it.
In fact, I can go for work at like 12 o'clock in the night or 1 o'clock and still have fun.
Alright, so you can see a night shot of Mumbai, the Queen's necklace. So what I've done here is more of a small lightning sort of an effect, and that's how I've introduced the hyperlapse. So these are basically the same frames of the hyperlapse, but I've added a color dodge to it, and for the second one it's a lighter color. So this one doesn't reveal the structure yet, but the next one gives a better idea of it, and then it starts into the actual hyperlapse. And then there is another shot of forced nostalgia through a very vintage effect. Alright, this is a very interesting shot. I wanted to use this, but I didn't know how. So what I did was I masked out the sky for the shot and tracked it and added this time lapse, which is again the same time lapse that I used in the previous edit. It's tracked onto this setup, and I've just reduced this speed. In fact, actually increased the speed to 200 to 300% and made it more of like a boomerang effect. Reversed the layers and then played it back and then reversed it again. All the while you can see the sky is not really going reverse, but it's going in the same direction. Yeah, a little bit of bamboozle over there. Yeah, and then you see these are quick cuts.
Always on the run, and that's the beauty of Mumbai.
I know, right?
So this is again some random shots that I've had of Mumbai, and then it ends with a shot that is going backwards,
Right at the front.
sort of giving a sense of a bigger picture. If you notice, we started the edit by going forward, and then I'm ending it with going backwards, sort of like a conclusion. And then at the very end is this. So this was a pretty easy shot to achieve. I have one shot of me sitting looking at the ocean or the sea or whatever it is, the skyline. Okay, and then I have a time lapse that I shot. I placed it over there. I tracked the original footage of me sitting, and it was pretty easy to track. I just tracked the bag and my face, or this bit, because of which I got all the rotational and the positional values. And then I pasted this on here, and now I cropped myself out. You could use any way that you want to crop stuff, but I think I used Luma key because it's very effective in images with high contrast, or these contrasting situations like the sky and the subject. And there was a little cleaning up to do over here because Luma key is not really perfect, but yeah, so it just
3 days now, like I felt it
moved forward. And then
3 days.
here is a very interesting frame. I hand drew a painting, so I screenshotted this frame, and then I took it onto Photoshop and kind of made a night version of the same thing. And there's it's I think 3 frames or 4 frames long. That's all. It's a really quick, unnoticeable effect that I just wanted to add over there, like a small touch, you know. It ends with a piano note over there, and I've taken it from the same track, maybe I think over here. That's it. I hope you found this video very helpful, because this is the kind of stuff I like to do. Let me know what you guys want to learn, or what I can share with you guys, and I'll definitely do it. You can write to me in the comments, or I'm active on Instagram. You can go follow me there. If you think my content is worth the subscription, consider subscribing, guys. Until next time.